Welcome back to ManicMods, YouTube's newest home of polished guides and pandemonium. Well fam, I spent 3 years pretending my house would not be compatible with Govee's outdoor permanent lights. It's true. As holidays fast approached, I'd be spotted outside staring at my roof, wondering, why? Why couldn't you just have eaves everywhere? Take it from me, don't get caught whispering to your roof or your neighbors might start to chatter. In today's video, I'll show you how the wait paid off as I walk you through the installation process. I'll share costs and must-have tips and tricks before unveiling the finished product. We have a lot to cover, so let's go! Before we get started, please note this video is not sponsored by Govee in any way. The same is true for my recent RGBIC video this year and for my next video, which just might contain more Govee. As suggested, I hadn't planned on taking the Govee permanent lighting plunge this year, but the prices were just too good. I first picked up Govee's spot and floodlights, and make no mistake, these are the gateway drugs to Govee's more hardcore lineup. For example, after extending the cables and post for these lights, I decided 13 channels of lighting was not enough for my house. So I awarded Govee with more of my hard-earned money for their permanent strand, because I'm a good consumer. As I waited for delivery, I went back to the community for solutions. On the forums and socials, you'll find many different solutions. These range from professional aluminum tracks costing over $600 to do-it-yourself off-the-shelf solutions using J-channel or drip edge to simplify Eaveless installs. All these solutions were too expensive or too close to the house for my taste. The community agrees you want these in even 3 to 6 inches from the house for best results. This particular install shows conduit blocking the light output. It was a big tip to me to ensure I was at 6 inches to eclipse my own conduit. And no shade to any fellow modder there, this channel exists to give back to the community that's helped me over the years. My first tip is not to even consider PVC. I made it to the checkout of Home Depot before I concluded this was never going to work without doubling my brackets. I ultimately purchased 8 aluminum angles as well as hardware and paint for just over $400. And when I got home, I confirmed the 6-inch bracket slipped nicely under my flashing. To ensure I had no issues though, I cut the house side to 4 inches, then painted to protect from the elements. I used ledger lock bolts to secure the 8 brackets and installed a bolt and locking nut to create drop-in posts. I was extremely happy with the results. The mounts were both discreet and strong. This method also allowed me to avoid climbing a 20-foot ladder since I was able to install my front brackets from the roof. And for a week, these brackets sat flush to my house as I anxiously completed preassembly. To kick off the preassembly, I prepared and painted the 8-foot aluminum channels that would solve for my 2 Eaveless peaks. I also took this opportunity to spray the brackets as well as my aftermarket connectors that I'll detail later. You'll notice these channels are different sizes, a 1.5 and 2 inch because the larger stock was limited. Both are valid solutions despite me targeting the 2 inch, and you will see the differences in preassembly as we move forward. To know where my cuts would land, I first measured the distance between my installed mounting brackets. This was done from on top of the roof and determined the length of the aluminum to cut and add to an 8-foot piece. The total length for each side was then joined with stainless locking hardware. As long as your angle seams are flush, this joint should not flex. After I had the total length prepared, I was on to lighting. I tackled the 1.5 inch angle first, which was for the left side of my house. For this smaller angle, I could not use Govee's included light brackets, which, by the way, is the best reason to buy the second revision of this product because the first didn't even come with them. Even in perfect conditions, I would never recommend using only adhesive for installation. There are just too many examples of failed jobs, and I absolutely throw shade at Govee for making some customers spend hundreds on 3D printed brackets that should have came with the kit. Rant over, I like Govee's hardware. So to make sure it stayed installed, I used white Gorilla Glue to adhere the wire sections, in addition to a small amount on the light where it sits flush against the rear. Thanks to the adhesive on each light, the process was effortless, laying out each segment before compressing down. After adhering the strand to the channel, I plan to cut the excess. Pro tip, before you make a cut, ensure you have a working set out of the box. Also make sure you're thinking about the overall run here so you standardize connectors. For example, the DC power comes out of the back left of my house in a female connection. So I wanted all of my aluminum channels to end right with a female threaded connection as well. I could have used Govee's included extensions for this, but I used connectors previously purchased from Amazon. I'll briefly summarize all my cuts in the next section. With the 1.5 inch angles pre-assembled, I added a strain relief to the connectors. before moving on to the 2-inch angles for the front of my house. The 2-inch angles were less messy, but a bit more work. I was able to use Govee's brackets for these after trimming one side. This sacrificed one of the mounting points, so I created 2 new ones and secured with nylon screws and nuts. Like the previous sections, these were also cut to length. Before mounting, I retested the strands in their final configuration. The top 2 pieces make up my front peak, and the bottom 2 make up my left peak. The sides destined for the top of the peaks had a single hole drilled, and the bottom was slotted to simplify installation. Install day came right before Halloween. I was extremely happy with the results. I had racked up a day's effort at this stage, and while nervous, it was time to climb up or shut up. First, I removed 2 ugly unused phone lines coming into the left side of my house. I recommend a call to your utility company if you're going to do this, but I have 0 regrets. With that out of the way, I went back to the roof with an aluminum angle in hand. I could not have been happier as I dropped the first angle directly onto its lower bracket. After the top was aligned and dropped onto its own bracket, I used locking washers and nylon nuts to secure each side of the angle to the bracket. The second of 4 angles completed my left peak, and at this time I was feeling particularly happy about the daytime appearance. Right before this shot, I finished pigtailing the DC connector from the attic to the exterior of my house using silicone to waterproof the hole. My front peak was not that different of a process, but a lot more stressful on account of the 20-foot drop and 220-volt electrical conduit, but I was way too deep to quit. I had to rely on my planning, but I was becoming more doubtful by the moment. Would wrapping a piece of aluminum in a plastic bag save me from electrocution? I told myself, it's fine.
Gotten this far, it's fine.
But I really knew.
This is sketchy. This is so sketchy.
After laughing off some nervousness, I routed that angle right through the support loop, and I was able to drop both sides onto the bracket. My safety bag parachuted to the ground, and I easily wrapped up the front peak. Before I share my results with you, I promised an overview of the entire run, including cuts and slack. As previously seen, the DC power comes out of the left rear of my house. It connects to the first segment, which is cut at 12 feet. A connector set pushes 4 feet of lights to the other half of the left peak. This side is 16 feet and uses a 16-foot strand, so the 4 feet is further pushed and pigtailed to the front of my house. This 4 feet meets another full strand to complete the front windows. Here I used a template and upgraded piercing screws to improve speed and accuracy of installation. And from the front windows is a Govee extension that was installed from the roof and leads to the front peak. Like the left peak, I cut the strand at angle lengths and pushed slack to the right side of my house, which completed my installation. And there you have it, fam. I'm gonna shut up now and roll some footage. If you have any questions on this project, please drop me a line below. If you want to see more Govee, give this video a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of me, you know what to do.